It's a wild world out there, but some worlds are even wilder. Hi, my name is Tyler Hapney, and you're listening to Dungeons and Dystopias. Thank you for listening. Hello, and welcome back to Dungeons and Dystopias. I am your Game Master and host, Tyler Hapney. I have Game Mastered hundreds of sessions of Cyberpunk Red and Dungeons and Dragons combined, and this podcast is a way for me to reconcile my thoughts on both of those systems. Today, we're going to be talking a bit more about Dungeons & Dragons, because between now and our last episode, there was a pretty large release for 5.5e, and that would be for, as we discussed, the new book that is going to be, has released. It's going to be The Heroes of and Adventures in Faerun. Very interesting. I haven't had a chance to really look through all of it, but I have had the chance to look through one of the starter adventures that are present in the book. So I figured we would discuss that particular adventure today. It's for level 1 characters, and naturally takes place in the Dalelands, which obviously I've done an episode on, and I have a campaign taking place in the Dalelands, so hey, that's pretty neat. So let's kind of get into it. This is a level 1 adventure for people who are just getting into 5.5e with new characters or maybe even new players. But it is called the Lost Library of Lethchauntos or Lethchauntos. That it doesn't actually give us a pronunciation guide, so we're going to have to just assume it's one of those. I'm going to say Lethchauntos and hope that's correct. But this is not only, it doesn't have to take place in Dalelands. They give you like 5 different options for where it can go, including the Dalelands, the Moonshade Isles, Icewind Dale, Baldur's Gate. I would believe are the ones. Oh, yes, and the and Kalimshan. So, a lot of different options for a lot of different types of flavors for this particular adventure, but the basic gist of it is that there is this maybe long dead, who knows, he kind of vanished, but there's this old orc wizard dude named Lethchauntos. Wasn't always named that way, but that's the name he's taken. Essentially, long story short on his background is he was sort of part of a family and also kind of part of a tribe. There's a lot going in here with like an Eden axe that's like a sentient axe with 2 minds, and he gives it to a warlord, and then there's a big power struggle. And essentially, this power struggle ends with Lethchauntos, who at the time is known by a different name, but known as Lethchauntos to the people in the public region of Phandalin. But his family gets killed by a bunch of poisons that only one guy knows how to brew. So he dedicates his life to trying to find antidotes and to sort of figure out these poisons. And he puts all of his work into this book that's called the Nathlum. And the Nathlum is essentially a really, really, I would consider it another popular, maybe even a very good book to throw at your players in D&D. I'd call it a bit of an artifact. But it gives you, it starts you out with just a bunch of stuff, a poisoner's kit, and you can create a whole bunch of poisons. Every poison in the Dungeon Master's Guide, plus 4 additional ones that we can get into later, maybe. But the main point is he gets this book together, and he begins going around the Forgotten Realms, finding different locations to essentially set up these libraries, memorial grave sites. I don't exactly know what you would call them, but they're basically built to memorialize his lost family that he lost to all of his poison, and you get the idea. Well, Lethchauntos nowadays, nobody's heard from the guy in a long time. He vanished. He's off probably somewhere in the outer planes, probably doing something crazy. Well, that's left all of these libraries behind. And there are these 2 magic students who found out about Lethchauntos. And see, the thing about him is because of all of his dedication towards this poison stuff, in his life, he was essentially misunderstood as an evil wizard who was dedicated to poison and necromancy and stuff like that. So these two magic students look into him and find out that's not the deal at all. They find out about the Nephilim, and they're suddenly very interested in finding it. So they wind up we're going to use the Dale Lands one for this one, but there are like 5 different options for necessarily where you can have this library at. But the default one is by the ruins of Myth Draenor in the Dale Lands. And we see some pretty cool things for a Dale Lands campaign. Of course, one of the main antagonists of the Dale Lands section is going to be the Zhentarim. And goblins and hobgoblins mostly. But still, the Zhentarim presence is, in my opinion, appreciated because you don't really see them too much. And I mean, it's the Dale Lands. You have to have the Zhentarim in the Dale Lands. It's like one of the hugest things there. So it's kind of cool that we do have that representation. I mean, it could be expected, obviously, but I don't know how much Wizards really respects all the old lore of, what's going on in the Dale Lands and stuff. But hey, it's nice to see, we've got a little bit of involvement from my favorite criminal organization in the Forgotten Realms. So Lethchauntos has left behind this huge library that has this I'd say it's magical book, all about poisons. And some of the most, rare poisons in all of the Forgotten Realms. And so these two are putting together a sort of journey to get there. Well, one of them goes to the Zhentarim. And they're like, hey, I'll give you this book, basically. They're like, you got to help me get it. So the other apprentice is not cool with this. Not in the slightest. They might be competing for it. I don't, there could be a whole litany of reasons, in my opinion, outside of what the book lists. But what is important is that this other apprentice is the one that is meant to get the party together and get them together and send them out after this library and kind of be your starting inciting incident for your players. So that's great. That's awesome. That's kind of a decent setup. I mean, it's a level 1 dungeon, so it's not like we're expecting huge, sprawling cinematic epics necessarily, but for a good first time adventure, that's a pretty decent setup. I mean, most people are going to get that. It's like, hey, this guy studied poisons for his life. He vanished, and now his book is in this library, and it's full of very rare poisons. I mean, hey, that's pretty basic, in my opinion. So what happens at the library? Well, depending on where you're going, I will say. Like I said, we're going to look at the Dale Lands version, but as far as I'm aware, if you do this in like Icewind Dale, it's completely different enemies. It's not goblins, it's more zombies. You get the idea. So primarily, on the first floor of this dungeon, you're going to find your goblins. They're been essentially hired here to watch the first floor of the library and ensure that nobody, comes in and messes things up, which obviously your players are going to be doing. So immediately, your players are going to be running into their first encounters, which are goblins, hobgoblins, and sort of whatever they've got in this tribe that, they've got guarding this library. There are all assortments of other threats within this library, but the main one already we have is we start out at a guard station with goblin warriors and a wolf, which is like, I'm almost positive most people's first encounter in 5e or D&D in general is probably a bunch of goblins and maybe a wolf. Some pretty basic stuff. The goblins tell you to turn around, and if you don't, obviously that's combat. From the guard post, there are actually 2 different directions you can go in. To the right is a cavern system with a den, and it turns out that there is a bear living there. So players can decide to go that way and encounter the bear, They might be able to sneak past it, calm it down, with an animal handling check. You get the idea. There's a lot of ways you could maybe make it so it's a learning experience for players. Because I am, once again, assuming if we're doing level 1 characters, I'm just going to assume that someone's probably going to be new to D&D at the table. And this might be their first adventure. That's kind of what I'm coming at it with. So the cavern and the den are to your right, but if you proceed forward, you wind up in the barracks where there is a locked portcullis. Um, I mean, figure out a way to do that, and open the portcullis. Chances are your characters will probably try to use brute force in some way, but spells like Mage Hand, stuff like that, they work just fine. So once the portcullis is up, you can now make your way forward into the center of the library, the rotunda. The rotunda is the sort of circular library, but it allows you to go down. When you get into the rotunda, you're going to find not only a goblin boss, but 4 goblin warriors hanging out. And surprisingly, they don't notice you, the party originally. But once he does see the party, it becomes combat. So, stealth could be helpful here. Otherwise, it's just another fight with some goblins. There are a bunch of cool books that they have in this bookshelf. However, they of course don't have the contents of any of these books. So I'd love to have like a write-up at the very least that discusses what is in these books when they like discuss them. But I mean, a lot of them we can probably guess what to eat and not eat in the wilderness, and which is a Faerun, an incomplete guide. But at the same time, God, do we really want to see the lore, specifically behind a lot of these titles? So, from the rotunda, you can proceed downstairs if you would like. However, let's go back towards the cave route because we're not done. If we continue through the cave, we will eventually wind up in the supply room. And the supply room has 3 hobgoblin warriors inside. They are, of course, searching through the crates, and you can sneak up on them and surprise them. But if the hobgoblins spot your characters, I mean, you're past the guard post, so obviously it's going to be straight combat. Display room is what would be next, continuing along through the cave. It is full of mementos of Lethchauntos' life and his family. There is a trap in this room. It is the wolf statue within. If the creature touches the table or anything on it, without first disarming the trap, the statue then fills the room with toxic gas. Oh no! Each creature in the room when the trap activates makes a DC 11 Constitution saving throw, taking 2d4 poison damage on a failed save, and then the trap resets after 1 minute. So there's a lot going on in here. The biggest one is the glass sphere, which is on the table, and obviously if you touch it, it activates the trap. But the glass sphere is an enchanted prison. Yeah, it holds a Empyrean iota, which is interesting, named Regret, embodying a faded memory of Mystra, the deity of magic. Turns out Lethchauntos imprisoned this iota to sphere long ago and may have just kind of forgotten about it. But if you approach the sphere, it pulses faintly with silver light, and if you touch the sphere, you can read into Regret's mind, and she says the word, "Set me free, I beg you." If Regret is freed, it assists the characters that he encounters on the upper level of the library, including Area 8, which is, of course, the Rotunda. Will not go further into the library, and after assisting the characters for up to 1 day, it flees. So, pretty cool. Next one is the guest quarters. There's nothing in here. Literally nothing in the guest quarters. So with that, you would wind up back at the Rotunda. Oh boy. So going through the lower level of the library, you will proceed down into the Rotunda and find that you still have quite a bit of a ways to go. I'm realizing going through all of this is definitely going to take a little bit longer than what we have. So we're going to get down to the nitty gritty and the good stuff. And we're going to talk about what the hell is going on with the Nephilim. So, the Nephilim can be found in the gallery, which is room number 16. And towards the back, I'd say, of the library. It is one of the bigger rooms. It is attached directly to the rotunda, but there are a lot of other rooms down here on the lower floor. Wish I could give you a visual, but I can't. It's a podcast. Basically, the other person, Powell, the person who hired the Zentarum, is down here with a couple of Zentarum bodyguards and some warriors. And obviously, it's combat. If the players don't just give them whatever they want, so that's great. There's also something very interesting going on elsewhere in the building. In Powell's bedroom, there is a mimic. It is shaped like the armoire inside. So obviously, that's fun. If your players go in there, you're going to have to contend with that. If they decide to touch the armoire in the first place. Apparently, the mimic's already been fed, so it's not even hungry. So, you really only get into the mimic fight if they decide to just start touching things. But yes, the gallery. Presuming we kill the Powell and the person waiting there, we are now able to obtain the Nephilim, which has the Glyph of Warding on it and the mace spells. I am assuming the Glyph of Warding has been cast on the book, but it says it just contains the spells. So at the very least, you could probably learn them as a wizard from the book. You just take that in and acknowledge it. All right. Well, once you've retrieved the Nephilim, obviously you can kind of just do whatever with it, but obviously you might want to return it to the person who hired you. You were paid 100 gold coins for that, which to me seems a little low, but okay. And if you manage to find Lethchauntos' journal, she is very happy as well. You, by the end of this journey, should be level 3. So, it's a good 1 to 3 adventure. And then they do have a way to continue it, if you're interested. She mentions the other locations in which Lethchauntos has built libraries, and says, hey, there might be some crazy secrets in these ones. So that can set up a campaign for your players if they're very interested in this sort of Lethchauntos, hidden library kind of storyline. And the other locations are great. Really, I mean, Icewind Dale, the art we get for these are so cool. I mean, I love the one in the Moonshae Isles, and I love how all of them have different types of creatures. I mean, in the Moonshae Isles, you're fighting not goblins, but bullywugs, and giant frogs, and satyrs, and, stuff like that. It's really cool. It's a different vibe for each library. And I imagine you can make the libraries tougher and tougher as the campaign goes on, and you can have some really interesting things being held by Lethchauntos, who is an interesting character, in my opinion. Wow, we are getting down to it, so I'm going to go quick through our monster of the week. And since I just talked about bullywugs, why not bullywugs? Bullywugs are fae. They're like frog people. They naturally have the ability to leap quite a large distance. According to the stat block for the Bullywug Warrior, they have a leap ability which allows them to jump up to 30 feet by only spending 10 feet of movement, which is crazy. It's a really good jump. I mean, hey, you can use that to get onto buildings, It's pretty awesome. The Bullywugs are, I don't know, man. They're just a really cute enemy, in my opinion. I love bullywugs. I use them whenever we're in a swamp area or, the Feywild. And they're always just a fun time. I don't know necessarily if the way I have them act is consistent to lore, but I mean, they're frog tribals. That's basically the gist of it. So they kind of have I don't know. I mean, a lot of their hunting society is going to be based around the fact that they can jump 30 feet with no effort at all. So, they if you're going to have a bullywug, I would make it so that they're they use more of that type of stuff like nets and things like that to kind of make the jumping a bit more of a threat. There are ways you can make it so that a bullywug just jumps up onto like a branch and starts shooting down at them. Like that's a sudden shift, and a lot of people aren't going to really necessarily be able to deal with that because for some reason a lot of characters just like to start with no melee, no ranged attacks at all, or very little melee, and sometimes it's fun to poke at those weaknesses. All right, that is going to be it for us this week. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you guys try out the Lost Library of Lethchauntos because it seems like a fun adventure, and I know for some new players, if I ever get the opportunity, I might run them through it just because it's very quick, very easy, just a quick dungeon. It seems like a pretty good way to get someone into Dungeons and Dragons. All right, that'll be it. Once again, thank you so much for listening to Dungeons and Dystopias. I've been Tyler Happy. Please come back next week where we talk more about Cyberpunk Red. Thank you so much.